Hi there, everyone. It's Max Valiquette. I'm very excited to be speaking to you today, and we will start in 2 minutes. And if you've already joined in, and we've got a chat window running up here, so I would love to know where you're calling in from or interneting in from. So please tell me where you're located. I myself am about a couple hours outside Toronto. Hi, Gail in Calgary. Hi, Richard in Sault Ste. Marie. Hi, Bevan in Calgary. Mohammed from Ottawa, my hometown. Jordan, bonjour de Vancouver aussi. Sure, Kemptville outside of Ottawa. I'm super familiar. Hi, Nicola in Saskatoon. I haven't been to Saskatchewan in a while. I should go. Hi, Robert from Montreal. I went to Cégep in Montreal, actually, believe it or not. May in Vancouver Island. That's probably lovely right now. Ooh. Sorry about that, everybody. Stony Plain, Alberta. What a great sounding town. Hello, Julie de Montréal. Stacy de Montréal aussi. Hi, Farhad from Toronto. How are you? You got Hamilton, more Vancouver. Atlantic Canada finally showing. Hello, Nova Scotia, Marin's River. Great for everyone joining. Alex in Vancouver, BC with an exclamation mark. I love it. Well, welcome everybody. It's great that everyone could join. I know that these webinars are a little bit strange for some of us who have only been doing them for a little while, but for others, it probably feels like you've been doing this for forever now. I'm thrilled as ever whenever I get to present to any group of people, whether you are in the same room or whether we're all connecting this way. So welcome aboard, everybody. I'll give people another 30 seconds or so just to get settled, and I'll probably have a drink of water. You can watch that if you want. It'll be very exciting. And then we'll get started with the presentation. All right, so welcome aboard, everyone. My name is Max Valiquette, and today I'm going to be talking about how to build your brand in a presentation that I call Big Brand Lessons for Small Businesses and Personal Brands. So first of all, hello again. It is very nice to be here. Before I get into my full-on presentation, I'd like to just set a couple of ground rules if I can. First and foremost, there is a chat window going on. Some of you have already told me where you are calling in from in that window. You can feel free to use that to ask questions, please. And I'll take questions whenever you would like over the course of the entire presentation. So don't hold them to the end. I've got you for an hour, and I'll moderate the length of the presentation based on how many questions I've been getting. But I far prefer that everyone here asks questions in the moment than that you wait until after and maybe forget it. So if we're all cool with that, feel free to ask questions when you would like. And other than that, I just want to remind people that there will be a copy of this presentation available for you as a recording when you're done, when I'm done, sorry. So you'll be able to take a copy of the have that electronic copy of the presentation with you. And at the same time, there's also a written white paper based on the presentation as well that you'll have. And so both of those will be coming your way as soon as we are done here. So I think we should probably get started. All right, first things first, Max Valiquette is my name. I'm the CSO of Diamond Marketing Group. We're one of Canada's largest independent ad agencies. We've been around for about 15 years now, but I've only been at Diamond for a little while myself. A bit about my brand. I've been called one of Canada's most influential marketers. I've won a whole bunch of marketing awards and market research awards. Our Prime Minister called me a can't miss public speaker. How you feel about him may have an impact on how you feel about that. I founded a company called Youthography, which was the first of its kind marketing and research firm devoted exclusively to young people. And you can find me on MTV, on the morning show, on the Wall Street Journal, National Public Radio, the Globe and Mail, talking about marketing, about innovation, and about brands. But today's lessons are about going from big brands to small ones, from biggies to smalls. So I'm going to take all of that learning that I've got from working on some of the biggest brands in the world, and I'm going to bring it to you right now to talk to you about what this can do for building your own personal brand or your small business brand. And I say personal brand or small business brand because there are in fact two types of brands, two types of smaller brands, I should say. And one is a personal brand, and the second is a small business brand. So what I mean by a personal brand is that would be a business of one, where you are perhaps an influencer, you are perhaps a consultant, you are perhaps a small business owner where that business has your name on it and only your name on it, and you are the brand of your business. That's what we would call a personal brand. And then the other one is a smaller business brand. So there we're talking about a smaller organization that still needs to have a brand. So not one of the big ones we're going to see, but the lessons are still going to be there. Those organizations are typically from 1 to, let's say, 50 people, but depending on your industry, it could be a little bigger or a little smaller. This was my business called Youthography, which I started, well over 20 years ago, and left it after about 10 years. I got too old, I think, to be a youth market consultant and not sound like I was quite creepy. So I had a pretty strong brand for my business and managed to turn that into a pretty strong personal brand as well. You can see me here giving speeches when I was younger and when my hair was a little darker, and the kind of work that that translated into meant that eventually I was able to actually move forward and talk about more than just young people. I actually changed my business into being about from youth marketing to innovation and disruption to talking about brands and brand marketing in particular. And that personal experience is something I'm just mentioning today because I want to let everyone in the audience know that I understand what it means to be a small business owner or to have a personal brand and to actually have to apply the lessons I'm giving you today to my own brands and my own business. So while I work for a large ad agency right now, I have 10 years of experience working in a very similar situation that I think a lot of people right now find themselves in, and I want to bring that to the table as well today. So it's as relevant experience for you as possible. And you can see one of the nice things about having a strongly developed personal brand or small business brand is that when you go elsewhere to another business, you bring all that equity with you. I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail as we go through this as well. But the bottom line is this: a personal brand and a small business brand are very closely related now more than ever. If you're a business of one, or if you're leading a business of some, this is a presentation for you, just as this would have been for me. All right, so let's just start by talking about what is a brand. And this is the definition of a brand according to Seth Godin, who's one of the big brand thinkers in North America, and he's pretty well thought of around the entire world. He says that a brand is the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that taken together account for consumers' decision to choose one product or service over another. If the consumer, whether it's a business, a buyer, a voter, or a donor, doesn't pay a premium, make a selection, or spread the word, then no brand value exists for that customer or consumer. So I say that a brand is this. A brand is a promise of value that has value, which is to say that a brand is something that promises that a business will bring you value, but good brands have value themselves. This makes brands and branding unique in that they are promising that something we're going to buy or something we're going to choose will be valuable to us, but brands themselves, when they do that often enough, end up creating value intrinsic in the brand. And it's not a new thing. So this is a wall from Pompeii. Now, I think as some of you might know or remember from your history lessons in high school or university, is Pompeii was completely covered in volcanic ash in 79 AD. A volcano essentially covered the entire city. And what's interesting is it left a lot of it preserved for us. So this is a wall from Pompeii that was advertising wine. Quite literally, winemakers in the region would spend money to put up the names of their wines, not just on the outside walls of homes, but actually on the outside walls of the biggest homes or homes owned by the wealthiest citizens of Pompeii at the time. So I love this as an example of branding because not only does it show that, yes, advertising and branding has mattered for a long time. As long as we've been buying things, we have needed to get them to market. So there has been marketing and advertising. But even back in the days of ancient Rome, purveyors of goods were willing to pay a premium to make sure that their brand was being featured in the best of locations. It's like advertisers paying more for advertising on a TV show that has a wealthier demographic. The principles have quite literally been around for thousands of years. And some good brands have been around for an awfully long time as well. Some of you may recognize this. This is the symbol for Bass Pale Ale. This is in fact the oldest trademarked symbol in North America. Oldest trademark symbol in Europe, and has been around since 1777. So this one in particular is really important to pay attention to because Bass has a really good story behind it. It's a beer that was initially brewed in 3 separate breweries, one of which had a red triangle as a designation, one of which had a yellow triangle as a designation, and the other which had a blue triangle as a designation. The beer from the brewery with the red triangle was the best of the beers. And so it was the one that they ended up producing more of. And they would actually stamp this triangle on barrels of Bass Pale Ale as they shipped it out. The beer got so popular and the brand got so well known, we're talking the 1800s, that something incredible started to happen. People who made worse beer would put it in similar looking barrels and stamp one of these things right on it, meaning that they were using the Bass brand to sell an inferior beer. And that's why they actually had to go ahead and trademark this symbol some 200 years ago, because the people who made Bass knew that a brand was a symbol of quality, and they knew that they had to keep that symbol of quality intact, and that if it appeared on a counterfeit beer, it was fundamentally going to damage the entire operation. So how popular was this brand? Well, here's a painting from Edouard Manet. It's about 100 years after Bass was started, and it's called The Bar at the Folies Bergère. It's a masterpiece of Impressionism, and some of you may have seen this before. Can you look in the bottom right-hand corner? I mean, there, right there, is a bottle of Bass Pale Ale. And I like to think that the painter probably thought about every element of this composition, and he chose to turn this bottle out to us instead of having the bottle face inward. There is a reason why we, as viewers of this painting, can see this brand, because the brand fundamentally means something. So there's that promise of value that has value. And that's lasted. About 20 years ago, Interbrew, which became InBev, bought Bass Operations, creating the second biggest brewer in the world in a deal that was valued at, I think, $4 billion at the time. And one of the big assets that they took with them was this brand and other brands that had been developed in that period of time. So great brands have meaning, and great brands last. It is so worthwhile creating a brand for your business or for yourself if you are your business, because not only will it draw your customers to you, but it's actually going to give you a lasting kind of power in your marketplace that not having a brand will take away from you. So it's your logo, it's your packaging, it's your typography, it's your brand personality. All of these represent a brand, along with your customer service, your price, your product quality, your corporate responsibility. But a brand is often a bit more intangible than that, because it's also emotional, it's also visual, it's also historical, it's also human. There are so many elements that go into making a brand. There are so many elements that we use when we diffuse a brand out into the marketplace. And that's why I like to start with how we build a brand at its foundation, by understanding what do brands do. So before we get into this, are there any questions so far from anyone on this little bit of branding history, or anything else you'd like to hear about me or myself? I'm always tempted to just go Bueller right now, but I probably shouldn't. All right. So let's talk about what brands do. And again, feel free to just put questions in the chat at any time when you would like to do so. I'm here to take your questions too. Here's what brands do. Brands make promises, and brands need proof. What I mean by brand promises can probably best be expressed by these guys. This is Disney. I think probably a lot of you are familiar with this brand. If you have kids, my gosh, you're familiar with this brand. But maybe recently, even without kids, you've decided to get a subscription to Disney Plus and you've been watching Hamilton, or maybe you watched Mulan or something. Disney is just one of the great brands of all time. Now, Disney's brands are really important, not just that big Disney brand, but all of the other brands that make up a part of Disney. And so Disney's actually made a lot of money off of very strongly protecting its brands. It's got an army of trademark lawyers who are ready to go hard at anyone who tries to use any of their brands without permission. So no one should ever be able to reproduce Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck without the express permission of Disney, and probably having spent a fair amount of money with Disney to license those brands. What I would say is super interesting is so many of us have actually been involved in this nefarious, illegal reproduction of Disney's brands and branding. We've either done it ourselves, or we've taken these two guys, and as parents, we've aided and abetted this horrible crime of reproducing these brands by allowing our kids to post these on our fridges. This is what I mean by the power of a brand, right? Disney knows there's such value in Mickey and Donald, because when the brand starts to mean something, we literally start making them ourselves and drawing these brands and putting them up there. So Disney has a really strong understanding of the value of its brands. This is the Disneyland and Disney World brand promise. It's where dreams come true. And I just want everyone to think about what this means, to actually promise people as they're about to enter your amusement park that dreams will be coming true. That's a huge promise for a brand to make. Oh, sorry. That's a huge promise for a brand to make. And I just want to show exactly how much that matters to the young people who love Disney.
Yes. We're leaving today to go to Disneyland.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not joking. Yes, we're going. Happy birthday! No, in a week, but we're going. I'm crying too. I'm crying too.
So that's what makes Disney so amazing. Here's a young girl who's actually never been before, but she really obviously wants to go. She's aware of what Disney World's all about, and she breaks into tears and even forgets that it's her birthday when her parents promise her a trip to Disney World, and she hasn't even gone there yet, because the brand promise of Disney is so strong and they communicate it so clearly. This is where dreams come true. You're watching Disney TV and you see a commercial for Disney World and you're a kid and you really want to go because it feels like that's what it is. The thing about Disney and what is so incredible about them is that they've built their brand promise backwards from their brand proof. Dreams really do come true when you go to Disney World or when you go to Disneyland. They do everything really incredibly, like making sure that there's a fireworks show every single night. Like that parade down Main Street feels like it's the first time it's ever happened every time they do it, even though it's the 1,000th or 10,000th time they've ever done it. They find extra ways to add on extra experiences to really drive up that dream coming true feeling. They make sure that there is a diverse representation of Disney cast members so that any kid can see themselves represented by someone at Disney, which is a critical part of making that dream come true. They also do a terrific job of removing all the pain points. If you can't remember where you've parked, but you can tell them when you arrived, they'll be able to tell you where your car is. If it starts to rain unexpectedly, they'll show up at your car when you're parking with ponchos and umbrellas. They'll charge you for them, but because they know that if you get into the amusement park soaking wet, you won't be having fun. They've also created things like fast passes, again, revenue opportunities, but ways to augment the pleasure points and remove the pain points. I think my very favorite thing about Disney is the fact that everyone who plays a Disney character learns how to sign their name in exactly the same way. So that if I go in August and I get an autograph from Princess Jasmine, and you go in June and you get an autograph from Princess Jasmine, it could very well be two different people playing Princess Jasmine, but the autograph will be the same. So that dream is still true and the illusion isn't shattered. Disney makes a promise and then follows through with proof.
You want to ditch school today?
And look at what happens when that same little girl is in the car with her parents a few years later. And I'm going to play this one to the end because you might not be aware of the origin of a famous meme, but it'll pop up at the end of this video.
You want to ditch school today? Let's ditch school today. I think we should ditch school and go to Disneyland.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
You serious?
Yeah.
No.
We're going to Disneyland again.
No.
Yes, honey. Oh, honey. We're going again.
Oh
Oh,
my
honey.
god.
Chloe, we're going to Disneyland.
Oh my god.
So her younger sister gives the best side eye of any kid that I've ever seen, and that's where that meme comes from, if you've ever seen it before. But that's what I mean by brands having promises and brands having proof. Now, it seems like it's easier when it's Disney, but smaller brands also make promises, and smaller brands also need proofs. And so if it works for the big guys, it works for the smaller guys as well. That being said, really great brands start with why. Before I get into this, I'm going to just answer a question. It's from Gil or Jill, who asked, have you created any famous brands? I've been involved in lots of brands. Most of the ones that I've worked on were already in existence, and I got to work on some pretty well-known campaigns. So I've worked on everything from Budweiser to Nike to Rogers to all the stuff you see right now from TD is done by me and my agency here in Canada. The brand that I invented from scratch that I'm the most proud of, you may not have heard of, but you may have. It was a youth anti-smoking brand called stupid.ca that my agency put together about 15 years ago. And it was a great example of a brand needing a really singular, strong thing to say, which was we were the first anti-smoking brand in Canada to actually government-sponsored, it was a government-sponsored anti-smoking brand, to actually talk about how smoking is stupid. And it was a great insight that we had into creating the brand at the time, where we actually went and talked to young people about smoking and asked them what they thought about it. And what we found was both smokers and non-smokers alike, we're talking teenagers, said that smoking was stupid. So instead of trying to convince young people that smoking wasn't cool or to be using statistics about medical issues or something, we actually used their own language and produced a youth anti-smoking initiative called stupid.ca that was incredibly effective. And during its run, we saw a marked decrease in number of young smokers. That's the brand that I created that I'm the most proud of. Anyway, all great brands start with why. And this is a guy named Simon Sinek. Some of you may have seen his TED Talk. He has a very famous quote in which he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I love that line. We've heard a lot about that line from that TED Talk is pretty famous, but it also is so famous because it works for so many different brands. Like I said, this is about big brands giving lessons for smaller businesses. And the first one that I would love to start with is Nike. So what is Nike's why? Well, we all know how they express their why, which is just do it. And that's what they say to us, but that's not their actual purpose themselves. That's not what Nike would say is why they actually are in the business of doing what they do. They would say that their mission is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. I'm going to repeat that. Nike's why is to bring innovation and inspiration to every athlete in the world. And an athlete has a little star there, an asterisk. And that asterisk is for if you have a body, you are an athlete. So I always like to ask this question, and I don't expect anyone to put their hands up because we can't, but in the chat, if you want to just write, does anyone know who the very first athlete was who featured in the very first Just Do It ad in 1988? If you want to take a guess and want just bragging rights for being the first person to get it right, I'll happily mention your name out loud. I've got Ari who says it's Michael Jordan. Richard Mooney says it's MJ. I'm guessing that stands for Michael Jordan as well. It's not. It's a guy named Walter Stack.
I run 17 miles every morning. People ask me how I keep my teeth from chattering in the wintertime. I leave with my locker.
So just in case you couldn't hear, he actually said, people ask me how I keep my teeth from chattering in the wintertime. I leave them in my locker. And that's Walter Stack, who was a 80-year-old marathoner at the time. What I love is that's Nike's brand purpose, right? Of course it works for Michael Jordan, which is a great guess. And of course it works for Bo Jackson, another guess I get a lot from the people who are aware of their 1980 multi-sport superstars. But it also works for people like Walter Stack. And you can tell a brand that has a great purpose because it doesn't just have to be communicated to us with the best athletes in the world. It can actually be communicated to us by an 80-year-old guy who just runs every single day. Now, Nike's actually made a bit of a pivot on their brand purpose recently, which is something that doesn't necessarily happen all that often, but they had, 50 years of success with innovation and inspiration for every athlete, and now they've actually moved on a little bit. This is the latest Nike ad. I'm not sure that everyone will have seen it. It is really fantastic. I'm playing it right now without the sound in the background, but they've migrated their brand purpose. So now Nike is about how sport brings us all together, the unification of sport. And they made this ad during COVID, which I think is incredibly impressive, by scanning 4,000 hours of footage of athletes and finding a way to literally show us coming together in a split screen rendition of what that means, featuring different athletes turning into one another, passing the torch to one another, spinning into one another, leaping into one another, falling into one another. This is an unbelievably great piece of work. And the thing about Nike is they understand brand purpose so much that even when they decide that their company has to change a little bit from being what it's about, no longer just about innovation and inspiration, but actually about the unification that can happen from sports, they're able to create great purpose-driven brand advertising. So your why is why you exist as a company, but where I disagree a little bit with Simon Sinek is I think your why is why you matter so much to your customers. So why you do what you do, your why, is also why you matter so much to your customers. And there's two whys I want us to think about then, not just the why does the company exist? Why did I start this business? Why did the founders start this business? It's why do we matter so much to the customers that we have? And so those two things come together into a great purpose, and a great purpose builds a great brand. And that's true for big brands and smaller brands too. So now I guess we get to where the rubber hits the road, and the question becomes, how do you build your brand? Well, here's some lessons for it. The first thing that I would recommend for anyone is to find your why, what your exact why is, what your brand purpose is. And that can be a difficult task for some of us to accomplish. I realize that I've got more experience in marketing and branding than a lot of people who may be paying attention to this call right now, but it doesn't mean that this isn't the right thing to do. So finding your why is the most important thing for any possible brand, for any brand out there. And your why, as I said, is the shared equity that exists between the reason you or your employees come to work every day and the reason you matter to your best customers. That's where your why is. Why do we exist as an organization in the first place? And why do we really matter? And I say to our best customers, because that gives us a focus. It's not about why we kind of matter to the customers who kind of like us. Aspirationally, our brands are built on our best selves on our best day. And so this is how we build a brand. We find that why. And I mean literally, we put that why on a piece of paper and we make sure that everyone in our organization understands that why, understands why that why is important, understands the words and can actually repeat it from memory. When you saw Nike's brand purpose to provide innovation and inspiration for every athlete, asterisk, if you have a body, you are an athlete, that would literally be on the walls in their office in huge, massive letters. That why is the thing that drives your organization and drives everything that you do, whether you're a group of 1 or a group of 40. And understanding that is the most important thing that you do, whether or not you're going to be making huge television advertising to get your brand out there, or your brand is entirely based on the word of mouth you're able to create when you're talking to people. I like to frame this sometimes as it's your elevator pitch. When people would ask you, okay, tell me about your business, you want to be able to say why you exist in the first place and why that matters to your customers in a single, really important line. So you've got to find your why. And there's no shortcut to this. So you can get a piece of paper and a pen or a tablet or a laptop or Post-its and a wall and a whiteboard or anything else you like, and you need to write down your why. It's not a speedy exercise, and nor should it be, but your small business or your personal brand needs a why. So why was this company started? Or why did you go into business for yourself is the first question. The answer here isn't to make money, because A really great brand has to mean more than that to the customers it's going to connect with. And what would your best customers say is the real value or benefit that you provide to them? And we just had a question from Robert who asked, can you define best customer and elaborate on that a bit? So Robert, your timing there is perfect. Thank you very much, my friend. What I mean by your best customer is a repeat customer, a customer who can fundamentally identify why they would choose you over a competitor or a competitive brand, a customer who you think really gets you and what you're all about, a customer who has definitely come back to you on more than one occasion. You don't want to be thinking about your why you matter to a customer and thinking about a customer to whom you haven't really managed to break through with. And if you're just starting your business, you're going to have to imagine what your best relationship would be like with your best customer. So at the advertising agency that I work at, our best customer would also probably be our largest customer, and that's TD Bank. And we know why we matter to them, which is we do great work for them, but we're incredibly responsive and they view us more as a partner or collaborator. And at Diamond, we talk about how we are brighter together. And so built into our brand purpose is a belief that when we collaborate with our clients in a true partnership model, we will create better work and that work will be better for them. So our why filters into absolutely everything that we do, how we talk about ourselves, but also the very reason we exist is because we were founded by a group of entrepreneurs who wanted to upend the traditional agency model and provide far more real partnership with its clients, which we really see with our best client, Toronto Dominion or TD Bank, who would say that we are definitely a partner to them and not just a provider. I hope that answers the question okay, Robert. So 2 questions to find your why. Why was this company started, or why did you go into business for yourself? And 2, what would your best customers say is the real value or benefit that you provide to them? If you can answer these questions honestly and succinctly, you can write your why. And you don't want to overthink this. You want to make this as simple as possible. If your business is a business of one and you're going to be creating a personal brand, that why on the why am I doing this side is often much easier to answer because you are probably realizing that there's a passion that you have and going into business around that, or you have found a problem in the world around you that you think you can solve and you're starting a business to do that, or people who you care about have expressed that there's a problem that they need solved and you are going into business for that. The why when you're a personal business of one, especially a new one, is often a lot easier to find than when you're a larger organization. But the why as to why do you matter to your customers is often a lot easier to get at, of course, when you're an established business with a customer base that you can talk to figure that out. So there's work to be done on both sides, but your why is completely findable. And so you can take a look at the internet, if you would like, and find a whole bunch of whys out there. Sometimes these are called a brand purpose. Sometimes it's called a brand vision or a brand mission. And sometimes it's even called a why. But here's 5 ones that I think everyone would understand. Disney says that their why is to create happiness in others. That's why they exist. And so their promise to you when you go to Disneyland is that it's where dreams come true. And then they give you all of those proof points. Nike's why is to unite the world through sport. That's their brand purpose at the core of why they exist now. And so you'll see when they make an ad like the one they've made, it promises you that they will find a way to unite the world through sport. And then they actually do more than just sell the products that they sell. Of course, they do world uniting, athletics encouraging, healthy living, community involved things, whether it's encouraging community runs and marathons and half marathons and Nike runs of all sizes, or whether it's taking a strong position in a Black Lives Matter movement. Nike has really extended where they're willing to go with their brand because they live this purpose very much, that it's about uniting the world through sport. I love Crayola as a brand because it's very simple. They're about fostering creativity in children. It's very clear and very straightforward, and you can actually see it in how they market themselves, in that even if there's a new product that they've developed, some new crayon that is actually not all that bright in terms of color, they still lead off with their sort of most child-friendly, brightly colored packaging and products in however they talk about the brand, which I think is great. Dove is a great brand to look at. Their why is a little longer. It's help women develop a positive relationship with the way that they look. This is a great why, and it's why they have their campaign for real beauty as opposed to just advertising campaigns that talk about that it's 99 3/4 moisturizing cream. And TD's why is to enrich lives, which is why they have their Ready commitment, which is about fundamental community involvement to make sure that we all have lives that are more enriched. I just had a question from Rocio, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, about how do you rebrand when your business partner has left and now some of your services have changed. I'm going to get to this in a couple of slides, but what I would say is a really great why shouldn't be about your products or services. It should be about why those products or services matter and why you want to bring them to market. Those products and services are proof points for your why. So sometimes when someone leaves a business, you're able to actually reconfigure your why if they've taken some products or services with them. It may make you actually more focused on what that why is, but remember, your why is why the company exists. So if it was just you, it was you and another partner, and now it's just you, you've got an opportunity to really find your own personal why for that business. And remember that the products and services are just proof points for that why. They're not the actual why of it. We had another question that these examples tend to focus on business to people. What if you're primarily B2B, providing a service rather than widgets? What are some of the key questions you ask yourself when thinking about your brand? Think consultant, professional services, etc. I ask the exact same questions. I really do. But what I say that when you're executing on a B2B strategy, there's more opportunity for thought leadership, especially in long form. And I tend to recommend LinkedIn as my #1 channel, or things like this actually as the way that I think great B2B marketing happens increasingly now, as businesses are looking for thought leaders almost everywhere, especially for consultants and professional services. I think your why, if you're going on B2B and you're providing a service, is often built a little more around a personal brand. So if you're an individual consultant providing that kind of a relationship with your clients, they're going to want to know about you as a person and your personal brand and what you're all about, which is when I've freelanced, what it's very much been. If you're a consulting service that is larger, I promise you that all of the big professional services companies, whether they are a Deloitte or a McKinsey or anyone, have done exactly this work on isolating exactly what their why is, and it is still, why do they exist? For a lot of them, it's to solve problems or to create smart strategic solutions are built into a lot of their whys. And for a lot of the why they matter to their customer, it tends to be something built around the strong understanding of their customer's business and the lockstep ability to be a partner. But I go through exactly these examples when I do it for B2B. So I've talked about TD as being a client of mine, whether we're working with the B2C group at TD or the the B2B group at TD, we still get heavily into what the why is for the brand, and it still has to ladder back up to enriching lives for both sides. Robert, you said, how do you distinguish why and mission? Are they equal? What I find is actually they're normally just terms that are usually interchangeable, sometimes not. You're going to find mission, vision, why, purpose, promise, positioning. All of these are out there. I like to just say your brand purpose is your why. It's why you exist. It's why you matter to your customers. Your promise is the way that you express that in your customer-facing communications. And your proof is the actual products and services that you offer that deliver on what that promise was. So I don't tend to put too much stake in the exact terminology. There's a lot of marketers out there trying to do what I do, and we all like a slightly different taxonomy. We all like slightly different terminology. So in general, what you'll find is mission and vision are often interchangeable, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And why, they all tend to exist in the same area, and they're about that fundamental purpose that drives the company forward. And that you'll see that term for all of those. And then Bevan, you've said, we have multiple products, both for end user sales and B2B. We are branching out. Who would best defend our why, the end user or B2B? I think the end user, I think the end user is the one who eventually is the best one to help you understand your why. And normally I would say this, if you've got multiple customers, remember the why is that intersection of why you exist and why you matter to your customers. You can talk to both of them. So in figuring out why you matter to your customers, not what products and services are being delivered, but why those matter, the difference they make in your customer's life. Whether it's B2B, there's still a human decision maker there for the time being anyway, or B2C, I would have the conversations with both of those customers and ask them why your business really matters to them, and that'll help you position your brand. Individual products get sold through different sales channels in different ways to different people as they need them, but here we're talking about the big brand. I'll come back to some more questions. I just want to get through a little bit more of this. So find your why. Create and write down your own brand purpose statement and use that as a guide for all of your branding activities. Number 2 is sacrifice, because positioning necessitates sacrifice. This is from a book called Positioning by Al Ries and Jack Trout. It's one of the best sort of early modern books on marketing and branding. And they say that positioning necessitates sacrifice. It's one of the critical rules in building a brand. You've got to stand for something. And doing that means choosing not to stand for a whole bunch of other things. Smaller businesses especially can be at a really significant risk here because the stakes seem higher. So it gets very tempting to brand our company as an organization that can do anything. Don't try to build a brand that does everything that your competition does. Focus instead on the thing that you do. Really good positioning means you will have sacrificed something. This is Starbucks, and their sort of why is a big statement that is summarized with the line moments of connection. And you can see them right here. We believe a shared moment of genuine connection over coffee is a simple act that helps provide an uplifting part of someone's day. Getting that moment right, every time, every cup, everywhere we are, creates a brighter outlook for customers, for ourselves, and for our world. So their why would be to create those moments of connection. And the thing about it is that you see it in all of Starbucks' branding. It's why they spend so much money on their stores, so that they're great places to sit, or at least they were until recently. It's why they have hashtag-centered marketing so that people can be reminded that they're part of a community. When they buy that pumpkin spice latte, they can go hashtag PSL and share that out on Instagram if they want to. It's why they have bulletin boards in their stores to remind you that you are a part of a community, for instance. It is why they write your name on the cup, even if they get it wrong. So even if Andy becomes Auntie, and Barbara becomes Marbra, and Bianca becomes Bianca, and Chad becomes Chat, and Patricia becomes Bachanda, they're still creating some kind of a connection by writing your name down on the cup. It's actually why they even develop some of their products sometimes. The Unicorn Frappuccino was not designed because it tastes great. It does not taste great. It is the sugariest, most odd thing you could get at a Starbucks. But people love it, and I guess it's to some people's taste. But people love to share it, meaning literally it's too much Frappuccino for one person, so they'll share it, but also that they will post it on Instagram whenever they buy it, reminding them that they are creating a moment of connection. Compare that to Tim Hortons. Now, their brand purpose is about fueling us for life in Canada. And so they don't write your name on the cup. They write what's in it. Their focus is on the fuel, not on the person. And both of these brands, when they're at their best, can be very successful. Tim Hortons created a cart through to remind you of Tim Hortons drive-thrus, obviously, which again, isn't about forging that lasting personal connection. It's actually about getting you on your way as quickly as possible. Again, both of these brands, when they're at their best, are really successful. And there's room for both of them in the marketplace because they've both understood that positioning necessitates sacrifice. So focus that brand purpose on something specific and clear. Don't do everything. Do a great job of standing for one thing. And I would argue that when Tim's and Starbucks have lost market share, it's because they've tried to be too many things. They've ended up meaning less to everyone, and that allows for competition from other competitors to creep in there and take away share. So there's room for lots of winners, whether the brands are big or small. What winning brands have in common is that they all pick one thing and they own it. We just got another question, sorry, from Carla Davidson, who said, for bookkeeping per se, should we be, we are here to relieve your stress, we are your partner, or something like that? That's a great question. So I would say, what is it that got your people at your particular organization into bookkeeping to begin with? Was it to solve problems? Was it to relieve stress? Was it to be a partner? That's a question I think you would need to ask. It can be harder with a straight up services organization like bookkeeping, where you might want to lean into the customer a little bit more. And I would ask your customers what it is, and I'll talk about this in a couple of slides also, what it is that you really do provide to them. And that might help you find your why on both sides of it. meaning stakeholder interviews are huge, and it's the easiest way to find out about your business. And I find that most customers, if they're repeat customers, won't mind taking the half hour to talk to you. I'll come back to this in a couple of seconds to just talk about a couple of techniques of how you can engage with that. But for sure, finding out that actual end benefit to your customers, why you matter to them, is really important. Bookkeeping is a really good example because it could be we are your partner. But depending on what your customers are like, it could also be, and depending on what your business is like, it could also be that you do relieve stress at one particular time of the month every month, or one particular time of year every year, depending on whether you're doing bookkeeping or taxes or whatever it is. But if you have a more holistic relationship with those customers and you're dealing with them every week or even every day, it could be more about that kind of partnership, or it could be something else entirely. But they will tell you. Your customers will tell you if you ask them properly. Point number 3 is distinct, not different. The one thing that you want to put at the center of your brand does not have to be something unique to you. You need to think distinct and not different. This is a huge one, I think, because people get very confused about this. We tend to think that we need to build our brands around a particular product or service that we offer that nobody else can. And I hear it from some of my biggest clients as well, where they ask me questions like, okay, but how do we make it unique to us? And often I will say, look, you're a commodity product in a category in which you have a lot of competitors that are very similar. I've worked on both Molson and Labatt brands, and as much as the branding is different, often the liquid in the bottle is very, very similar, if not almost exactly the same. But that doesn't mean that there aren't attributes that we can't pump up as being distinct, and that's what we want to own. So the last thing to think about as you build your brand purpose is that the why, the one thing you stand for, doesn't have to be unique to you. You don't have to be different, you have to be distinct. Different just means two things that aren't the same. Distinct means a quality of your own that you want to highlight and maybe even own. Unless you have a product or service or feature that your competition will never be able to reproduce and that matters to your customers above all else, you can put what you want to make distinct about your brand front and center, the distinct benefit to the customer that you want to focus on, and own is yours. That's almost always better than building a brand around a service only you offer right now. A really good example of this for people would be Uber Eats, which has built a brand that initially was just about the product that they offered, the service that they offered. We bring restaurants to your home. And it's great, except it took very little time for DoorDash and Foodora and Skip the Dishes, and those are just 3 brands that were available in Canada, to come and start taking away that business from Uber because it hadn't differentiated itself as a distinct brand that stood for something above and beyond that product or service. The market will usually take care of a number of the competitors when you're all doing exactly the same thing, and that's why we don't have Foodora anymore. But we do have DoorDash, and we do have Skip the Dishes, and we do have Uber Eats. And Uber left itself very wide open and very vulnerable by building an Uber Eats brand that was literally just about the service they offered and not about why that mattered to us or why they got into it in the first place. You'll notice that a lot of the other players are doing a great job of coming after Uber right now because they were built not because they were a delivery service that happened to be able to use the same cars that would take people around to drop off food, because they were food services. So your DoorDash and your Skip the Dishes are fundamentally about that passion for food. And the reason that they are able to eat into Uber's market share is because that why matters, right? To me as a customer, the passion for food and the desire to get you great restaurants at your house is something that really matters to us when it's built into a brand, as opposed to just, well, we had a fleet of vehicles that we thought we could repurpose. Here's a good example from the 80s with Nike and Reebok. They would both release new technology in their shoes. On the left, you have a Nike Air, and on the right, you have a Reebok pump. But you'll notice Reebok is actually talking about the pump technology in it. That's the product or the service. Nike doesn't talk so much about the air cushioning. It actually leads off with gravity will never be the same. The benefit to me isn't that I get to pump my shoes up. The benefit or that there's air cushion in the bottom of it. The benefit to me is that I can jump higher and therefore play better basketball. Nike understands that in a way that Reebok doesn't. Again, when it comes to running shoes, it was smoke them, as in run faster than they are. as opposed to what a Reebok ad might look like, which moves away from that singular point of difference. So distinction, pardon me. Distinct, not different. How you talk about the thing you choose as a point of distinction matters more to your brand than a product or service that you own. And if you happen to have cornered the market on a single product or service that none of your competitors have, and none of them have a competitive product or service that does in market for your customers, for their customers, what you do for yours, then great. You can talk just about that thing. But those are few and far between, and eventually those businesses tend to suffer because at some point, someone figures out how to do what you're doing, but better. Number 4 is use the right tools. So look, we all work differently and your mileage may vary here, but in my experience, good branding starts with more than a keyboard or even a piece of paper and a pen. This is an actual brand. This picture you can see on the right-hand side, it's a big complicated one that I built for a big client of ours. And I used Post-it notes and colored markers and a wall, in this case, a window actually, to get all my thoughts organized. When you're building out your brand purpose and your why, you are going to be dealing with lots of different thoughts and bringing them together, killing some of your ideas and moving others around. I like Post-it notes and colored markers for this because it's very fluid and you can build them out any way you want to and allow fluid movement and organization. This is way more stuff on a wall than you will need when you build out your own brand, especially when you build out your own why. But what I'm saying is that if it can work for a really big brand like my clients, it can absolutely work for you as well. You'll just have 1/10 the number of Post-it notes, and therefore you'll need a smaller wall. The other most important tool is research. And this is where smaller businesses and personal brands are often at a loss. It feels like research can be really expensive, and it feels like research can be really unwieldy. What you do have access to are people in your circle. And that's either clients, if you've got a going concern, or the people in your life if you're starting a personal business. So what I say is conduct stakeholder interviews with your clients, but focus on your positive attributes and successes only. This isn't about customer service. It's not about talking to clients about what you could and should be doing better. This one is about finding out what are your best attributes that you're going to build your brand around. So you should be finding that out, why you matter to them the most, what they've gotten the most benefit out of you, what they keep on coming back to you for. That's a very good way to build out the part of your why that is customer based. But if you're on your own and you're starting a new business, I've got an interesting exercise for you, and it's called strength bombardment. And you can do this in the real world, or you can do this online and virtually, where I actually started my own business by getting people in a room with me. And I asked them, and it was very flattering and very nice, and the people in your life will do this for you. I actually asked them to take a piece of paper and move it around a circle, and everyone wrote something different that they thought was a really positive attribute that I had. I actually often do this when I'm conducting workshops for people starting businesses, in which I'll have groups of people who all know each other around a table, and they'll each pass that piece of paper around, each writing something about the last person, meaning you'll get a piece of paper at the end in which 7 people will have written nice things about you, but everyone at the table will get that. And I think that that exercise of strength bombardment, if you can't be in a group right now, but you're starting your own business, it's very much worthwhile to ask people who are close to you to write down what makes you good at what you do, or what makes you have a kind of why for them. You can ask them to focus it a little more on business applicable attributes. But when we start businesses of our own and we build personal brands around them, what I find really interesting is this. We often get away from ourselves as a brand, thinking that we shouldn't be talking about ourselves and why we're particularly great. But the business that you're starting, if it's a business of one, is about you. So it had better be related to why you are awesome. Now, I think sometimes that's difficult for people because you haven't started that business yet. So you don't want to say that you're awesome, but you have to go into this as if you are. And so ask 6 or 7 people who believe that you are awesome what the why is, why you matter to them, and specifically why if they were a customer of yours, you would matter. And that will help you build out your why for your personal business brand. It's also just fun. Okay, then I would suggest that you pick a channel or 2. And by that, what I mean is there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, there's Facebook ads. Really, those are the big channels for small business advertisers and marketers right now. And I would say pick 1 or 2 to start. There is also Google, which I will get to in a second, and that's a different kind of thing. But if you're really going to start advertising, meaning you're creating an ad of some kind or some content of some kind to market what you are, the big mistake that people make is they think they have to be everywhere all at once. If you are B2B or you're providing a kind of consulting service, as the question was asked, I heartily recommend LinkedIn. That just says LinkedIn, I apologize. I heartily recommend LinkedIn over any other potential channel because it's where your customers probably are, supplemented probably with Facebook ads. If you are starting some kind of a retail business, you have got to be on Instagram and you've got to actually be selling through Instagram if you can. If your business is more sort of broadly about thought leadership and you'd like to have a large media presence, Twitter might be the best place to get to because what you do can get retweeted very quickly and you can build a strong following there. And Facebook ads can be good for almost any business because you can target them so well at what people are searching for and extends beyond just Facebook itself, but into anywhere that's using Facebook's engine. But you won't be able to do all of these. So you can do some research and find out where the best places are for businesses like yours and go on those. But broadly speaking, that's what I say we look for. So just like you need to focus on one thing to stand for, you also need to prioritize a media channel or two in which to speak. But the last thing I want to say about that is make sure you Google My Business, Your Business. And so to that, what I want to say is build a business profile on Google, because people will be searching for you. Eventually, you'll also be getting into search engine marketing or search engine optimization, but you may not have time for that at the beginning. A business profile on Google makes sure that in the single most dominant name in search, you'll do as good a job as possible as making sure that you pop up to the top of people's search results. It's free. It's actually very easy to do, and you can do it yourself, or you can easily Google consultants who will help you set up the best possible business profile, and it's not that expensive. Soren Silvestru just asked, how do you know that the people you interview will give you honest answers? That's why I say go talk to your best customers. If you talk to repeat customers who have been with you a number of times, they should be giving you honest answers about why they keep on coming back to you because they're repeat customers of yours. So they should have found the thing that they like about you. You have to be prepared for the honesty of the answers. Sometimes it's you're cheaper than everybody else. Well, that's a reason why your customers are engaging with you. So you've got to be prepared to hear that. But usually when you have long-standing repeat customers, they are going to say your price is good. They're probably also going to say that they've got a good habitual relationship with you. But you can ask them, so what happened the first time you decided to come back to me? Or what was it that made you come back for the first big piece of business you threw my way? Or how come after we'd been together for a while and I did something for you that didn't work out so well, you came back anyway? There's a lot of questions you can probe to get at what they really think. I would just say that your longer standing repeat customers should be willing to give you honest answers because they should have that kind of a relationship with you. But more than anything, I would say, remember the whys. Why you matter to you and why you also matter to your customers. So as much as I'd like everyone here to go through all of those other 6 things and eventually get that Google business profile and get your Facebook ads out there, those won't be effective if you don't remember those 2 whys and build them. So why you matter to you and why you matter to your customers. There are lots of great smaller brands out there, and now you just have to go and build yours. So we've got just a few minutes left. That was going to be it for me, but I'm going to try and answer some of these questions very quickly if I can in the last 3 minutes that we have. Jill Johnson said Google is the best to get lots of jobs for there. That's good to hear. So thanks for that. Warren Munn also said that testimonials work, and I would absolutely agree. Having client testimonials is a really good idea. Sherman Chan just said, what's the difference between doing a Google business profile versus having a website? A website would be a hosted website you build, usually with an address like www.shermanchan.com. A Google business profile actually exists within Google servers and is the way that it's able to prioritize in search. So you've got it's 2 different things. A Google business profile will actually have your website address, and when people search in Google, one of the big results up at the top or one of the big results down the side may be your business, and it will link to your website from it. So it's a profile of businesses that exist within Google's ecosystem, and it allows them to prioritize your business results when people are searching. What about the people or potential customers who do not have access to Google? Is there another channel to start with? Thanks. I would say that there's not going to be as great, as nearly as great a single thing I would recommend a small business owner to do than to build a Google business profile. And it is just the #1 name in search by a huge factor. So that's where I really would prioritize it. If you want to find another channel, it's going to depend on where those customers can be. If they don't have access to Google, I'm going to wonder if they wouldn't have Facebook pages or be on Instagram or LinkedIn, if they wouldn't be online in a digital ecosystem at all. And that's just going to make them a lot harder to reach for a small business owner. The very best thing that you can do is find a way to market your customer to your customers digitally. And so they should probably be seeing Google or Facebook if they're online somewhere. And if not, I'm not exactly sure where we would put them. Even running ads through Facebook, we'll put them up on sort of non-Facebook sites as well, where those sites use Facebook's engine. So it's important to recognize that how pervasive those two are, and therefore why they're usually pretty good for small businesses. How often should you post testimonials for your customers, and should you post it in all channels? I would say you should post a new testimonial from a customer when you get a really good new testimonial that you want to post. So it can actually be fairly often if it's something really good, but depending on the size of your business, it's not something that you certainly want to do on a daily basis. I would say you need to refresh, most of us need to refresh some kind of a new testimonial, depending on the size of our business, every couple of months or so. Once you have a good batch of testimonials up there, you probably don't need a whole lot more, depending on what your business is. So I would say that if it seems like you've already got a 5-star review from people on LinkedIn, and there are 5 people who have said great stuff about you in that channel, you probably don't need many more testimonials than that. I think we are out of time. So it's 2:30, which is where we are ending. I want to say thank you very much to everyone. There have been some very nice comments. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to every single question. I want to thank Intuit for having me here, because it's always a pleasure to work with them and their brand, which is particularly terrific. And just a reminder that there will be a white paper that follows this and a recording, so you can have both of those things to take this with you. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.